So this is Module 9, Measurement and Analytics. I understand that most people, most of us, did not go into communications because we loved math. In fact, that's probably the reason we're not marketing majors, or one of the reasons we're not marketing majors, because we're better at words than we are at numbers. However, measurement is important. And measurement is something that, while students are not terribly thrilled about, hiring managers really care about. So the idea behind this module is pretty simple. You do not have to choose between caring about the mission of your organization and measuring the outcomes. You have to learn to do both. We're going to talk a little bit about why measurement is complicated, and then we're going to give you a practical framework for choosing the right metrics, reading them well, and talking about them in a way that earns you the seat at the strategy table, which is what you need. By the end, you should be able to look back at a campaign result and say something more useful than, gosh, that went well, or we got a lot of engagement. You should be able to explain exactly why that went well, and you should be able to give recommendations for the future. So we're going to look at the complicated relationships that both communication and arts nonprofits have with metrics. Communications, we did not do a lot of measurement of strategic communication before social media. We went a lot on vibes, right? Brand warmth, earned trust, the ineffable quality of being known and liked. And we use surveys for things like top of mind, right? But surveys are expensive, so we didn't do them all that often. And the other metrics that we used are really horrible, and I'm not even going to mention them here. But then when social media happened, we had so many metrics, so many things suddenly that we could measure because it was all digital. We could measure reach, impressions, engagement, shares, saves, likes. We can measure, new followers. We can measure sentiment, right? And the problem became more the idea that you needed to measure the right things, right? Because so you have some followers. Who cares? Does that make a difference to your business? When we look at arts nonprofits in particular, the tension is that can what we do be reduced to ticket sales and fundraising totals? Is it about cost per patron? Do you put a number on what happens when a teenager hears a live orchestra for the first time? Can you put a number on a non-biased source of news? Right? No, of course you can't. But the reality is that if you can't justify your budget with fundraising and ticket sales, right? There's no art nonprofit. The mission still needs buildings. It still needs equipment. It still needs to pay people. And all of those involve business objectives, which are really money. And we need to show how what we do as strategic communicators directly affect getting that money. So here's a brief history of metrics. Essentially, it talks about building relationships, press coverage, earn goodwill. That's before digital. Early digital is, email open rates and website page views. We have the glut of information from the social media era. And now we have the question is no longer can we measure this, because of course we can. It's which of those 47 things we can measure actually tells us something useful. So I teach a whole class on social media measurement. The reason why I do this is because, and frankly, in all of my social media classes, and I teach quite a few, I always talk about business objectives. Because if I send students out into the world saying something like, my job is comms, I don't measure business outcomes, which, by the way, is the traditional academic difference between public relations and advertising. Public relations is not as measurable academically as advertising is, as marketing is. But the problem is nobody hires you, or very few places, except the very largest companies, hire people who only understand PR or only understand comms or only understand marketing. They want people who have an integrated view of all of those things together. And you can't say my job is comms, I don't measure business outcomes, because then you're not going to get a job, because business outcomes are important, right? Even to nonprofits who are theoretically not in business, but they do still have to have business outcomes. So instead of that, what you want to say is our email campaign drove 43 donations totaling this much over 4 weeks. The Instagram series generated 340 link in bio clicks to the ticket page during the run. The patron story content had a 4.2% engagement rate, double our baseline, in the week before the renewal ask. These are sentences that your employer wants to hear, and when you explain, and in those sentences you can hear the explanation of why what we do is important, and why I should be paid well, and why all of my staff should get a raise, and those are also important things too. I do want to validate some of the resistance that communicators may feel toward measurement, because it's not completely irrational, particularly in the not-for-profit space. There is something genuinely reductive about trying to capture the impact of live performance in a spreadsheet. The moments that matter the most in arts work, right? A child's face, a donor who understands why they give, don't fit neatly into a dashboard. And yet, there's a board meeting that happens every quarter, and the development director needs to report to funders, and the executive director has to justify the communications budget when there are 10 other things competing for those dollars. So I want to stress that I'm not asking you to choose between the mission and the metrics. You're being asked to get good enough at understanding the metrics to protect the mission. That's the reframe. Measurement is not the enemy of the mission. Done well, it's what keeps the mission funded. Or restated, as the core argument of this module, rejecting metrics entirely is a principled position that unfortunately makes you unemployable. The organizations doing the most important work, arts work in this country, still have boards, budgets, and funders. You can't opt out of measurement. Option 2, measuring everything, which is what a lot of communications do when they feel pressure to show the data, because things that aren't terribly important are often the easiest things to measure. And so they pull every metric from every dashboard and put it in a report. And this is exhausting to produce and meaningless to read, and does not actually demonstrate anything of use to the organization. It demonstrates that you know where the analytics tab is. So option 3 is the goal. Disciplined selectivity, which means that you have made deliberate choices about which metrics you connect to your real objectives, and that you understand what those metrics mean, and you can explain what you would do differently based on what you found. That's the whole skill. The rest of the module is the toolkit for that skill. So think of this hierarchy as your measurement filter. Before you decide whether a metric belongs in your framework, you should be able to say what tier it lives in. Tier 1, outcome metrics, and these are frequently money metrics, are the only metrics that directly answer the question, did the campaign work? These are the numbers your executive director and board are actually interested in. If you ran an annual fund campaign and you can report how many donations it drove and what they totaled, you have done the most important measurement work. Tier 2, behavioral metrics, are actions that audience took in response to your communication content. These are the ones that come most directly from what we as strategic communicators do. We can measure a click, an RSVP, a form completion. These are meaningful because they represent intentional choices and they are responses to a call to action. They don't guarantee that business outcome, but they're reliable signals that can stand in for business outcomes. If open rates are high and click-through is low, something in the email is working, but the content isn't connecting to the ask. And that's something we can fix. If we get a lot of link clicks from our Instagram bio through to the purchase page and it's selling tickets, then something is actually working. And that's another thing we put in our report that shows that our communication strategy is effective. And tier 3 are engagement metrics. These are the ones that fill a lot of reports and mean the least. Likes, shares, follower counts. These are worth knowing about because they give you a sense of whether or not the campaign is resonating. But a campaign that got 2,000 likes and 0 donations is not successful. So you can't let engagement be the whole story. The most common failure mode in any strategic communication report is presenting only tier 3 metrics because they are the easiest. But you can't do that because it means that you're not measuring what the people who are in charge of the organization care about the most. Don't do it. So those engagement metrics, by the way, are sometimes called vanity metrics. And the vanity metric trap catches everybody at some point. Vanity metrics feel good because the numbers are large and they go up reliably. Post consistently and your follower count grows. You can pay for increased reach if you boost posts. The whole point of boosting a post is to get increased reach, and pretty much any social media platform will guarantee that that's going to happen. Post anything remotely emotional and your engagement rate spikes. These numbers are easy to find, they're easy to screenshot, and they're easy to put in a report. The problem is that you have to connect them to the work. Let's take examples, right? 10,000 followers. If those followers never attend a show, never donate, never share your content with someone who might attend a show or donate, they are essentially decorative. They might as well be bots. A list of 400 email subscribers who open consistently, who do buy tickets, who do donate, is worth more than 10,000 Instagram followers who don't. Impressions. Impressions count every time your content appears somewhere on a screen, including the same person scrolling past it multiple times. Reach, which is how many unique accounts had an opportunity to see something, is a number that tells you something more specific about the distribution. There are no duplicates, theoretically, in reach. Now, reach is still only opportunities to see. It doesn't actually mean that anybody saw it, but still better than impressions. A strong engagement rate. This one is subtle because engagement means at least someone did something. They liked the post, they saved the post, they put a comment under the post, right? But the problem is that a post about a beloved retiring board member will get huge engagement. But it doesn't mean that the campaign strategy is really working, right? Context matters. If you have a strong engagement on a post about an upcoming performance and you see ticket sales go up, that tells you more than just this post had a lot of engagement. The other thing, obviously, about a strong engagement rate is that strong engagement rate doesn't mean positive sentiment. You do something wrong, do something scandalous, do something controversial that doesn't work with the target audience you have, and your engagement rate will spike. but you will not be happy about what happens as it does so. So the test, which I think is most useful, is if this number improved, but nothing in your actual campaign objective moved, is it still worth reporting? And if that answer is no, it's a vanity metric. So we're going to go platform by platform. This slide covers LinkedIn and Instagram, and we're going to look at what good platform metrics are, right? LinkedIn, the most important thing to understand about LinkedIn Analytics is the follower demographics tab. Because most organizations find that as they grow their LinkedIn followers, and when they actually look at who is following it, it's mostly other arts administrators. It's not donors, but you want donors. Now, not necessarily a problem because peer credibility matters, right? But you should not be congratulating yourself on follower growth if the followers aren't the people you need to reach. The executive director's personal profile almost always outperforms the organizational page. That's because people connect with people, not with organizations. A genuine post from the ED about why a program matters will reach further and convert better than an organizational announcement. So always leverage the people in your organization to help you reach the right followers. Instagram. Here we have reach versus impressions. Impressions, again, count every load of the content, right? Reach tells you how many unique accounts saw it, or again, I want to specify, had an opportunity to see it. So when you're evaluating if this is a good distribution channel for you, you're looking for reach. Saves are underrated, but they're important because when someone saves a post, they're signaling that they want to come back to it. That's a stronger signal of genuine interest than a like. Likes are cheap. It's one little click. I like everything. I like everything on all the reels that go because I like these people and I want them to know that I like them. So I give them little hearts right and left. That doesn't mean that I'm really interested in what they're saying. If I save a post, that means I'm interested in what they're saying. The link in your bio, the clicks on the link in your bio are a tier 2 behavioral metric that you get from Instagram without paid tools. And that is probably one of the strongest indicators that you are converting something, that your call to action, which is usually click the link in my bio, right? That your call to action is working and that people care enough about what you're saying to do the thing you just asked them to do. So Facebook. Event RSVPs are important. And specifically, I want to talk about them because they're underused and undervalued. When someone RSVPs to a Facebook event, that's a behavioral signal that they've taken an action and that they are at least considering your event seriously. That's also a tier 2 metric that reliably predicts attendance better than reach or engagement. Not everybody who RSVPs is going to come every time, but I bet when you check, there's a percentage of RSVPs. In other words, if you get 100 RSVPs, you can reliably predict that 60 people are going to show up. You track that over time in order to get a reliable number. But you will see that people tend to behave the same way every time. And there's going to be 40 people who clicked it and they really didn't intend to, they're not planning on going, but there's other 60, they're actually clicking it because they are likely to go. Anyhow, it's a behavioral signal that is important and better than reach or engagement. Organic reach, by the way, is 6% of your follower count at best. And that's just because we're nonprofits. It's actually much lower for for-profit organizations on Facebook. So that means if you have 2,000 followers, roughly 120 people see any given post that isn't promoted. And the other sad thing is that the bigger your followers get, the more followers you have, the fewer people, percentage-wise, see your posts. So if people seeing a post about an event matters, you need to budget something, a small amount, for boosted posts. Even $20 and a targeted promotion will outperform organic reach significantly. And you can target much more closely when you're promoting a post. So email is a platform where we have reliable measurement, and we'll talk about when you don't in a second, but let's just say for the moment, reliable. Your email service provider, MailChimp, Constant Contact, or whatever your CRM, customer relationship management system uses, tracks opens, clicks, and in many cases, conversions at the individual subscriber level. You cannot see just overall open rate, but which subject lines performed better, which links got clicked, and how behavior changed week over week across a campaign. If you're not looking at this data in between emails you send out, you're flying blind in a cockpit full of instruments. Now, the caveat, right, and the reason why we want to look at more than just open rate is that Apple's mail privacy protection, which came out in 2021, broke open rate tracking as a reliable metric on Apple devices. When a recipient uses Apple Mail with MPP enabled, which is the default, Apple prefetches the tracking pixel and registers an open, even if that person never actually opened the email. And the result is that open rates for lists with significant Apple Mail users are artificially inflated. An organization that used to see 28% open rates might suddenly show 60%, and not because engagement improves, but because Apple servers are pinging the pixel on behalf of every subscriber using Mail on an iPhone, iPad, or Mac. The problem in particular for arts nonprofits is that our donor base skews older and is more Apple heavy than average. Artists actually are the people who are most often using Macs, and the same with their biggest fans. So you have to understand what happened with the Apple Mail Protection Protocol. But the good news is that so open rates are now less meaningful, and you need a caveat. You need to treat open rates as directional, not definitive. It can still tell you something about relative performance, right? But it can't reliably tell you your actual audience size. So you want to shift to something like a click-through rate. I talked about this earlier, by the way, in the course, but I'm bringing it up again because it's something that not everybody knows about. And it's important to understand why click-through, right, is a reliable email engagement signal, right? Click to open rate, clicks divided by opens, is less reliable, so track your raw clicks or your click-through rate against total sends. So here's the structure for the assignment. Walk through each component. Component 1, object restatement. Copy your objective from Module 8 at the top. And every metric that you include must be traceable back to it, right? Writing that objective forces you to anchor every metric choice to a specific goal. And if you can't draw a line from a metric to the objective, it shouldn't be in the framework. Component 2, the metric stack. 3 to 5 metrics is the right number. Fewer than 3, and you probably haven't captured the full picture. More than 5, and you've probably got metrics that aren't doing anything for you. For each metric, you need what it's called, which tier it belongs to, where you'll find the data, and what the baseline currently is, and what success looks like, and how often you're going to check that. Now, you can do research, right, to find all of that information. And I will try and add some info in this module to give you an idea where to go. Component three, the reporting narrative, right? This is the part people skip and probably the part that matters the most. Numbers don't interpret themselves. 2 or 3 sentences per metric explaining what the data means and what decision it informs is the difference between a strategist and someone who knows how to download a report. And you want to be a strategist because strategists are included in the planning and they are important and they have control over their destiny, if you want, captain, oh my captain. Last is going to be revision triggers. And you want 2 revision triggers. And you're like, well, what's a revision trigger? A revision trigger says, if this specific threshold is crossed, this is what we change. The reason is you want to prevent 2 types of failure. Ignoring the data until after the campaign ends when you can't do anything about it. You need to be looking at the data during the campaign because you can change things during the campaign. When it's over, it's too late. You can't change anything. But you also don't want to be changing things constantly based on noise rather than signal. In this module, there's a page referencing sample revision triggers. You can also look some up if you wish. What I want you to particularly understand is that if things are going very wrong, you can change your tactics, your message, or your presentation to improve your results. Eventually, as you do more of this, you'll understand what to do when. You will understand what means what. But until then, look it up, because trust me, you will not be the first person to have any particular problem on a platform. So, data literacy without strategic inference isn't terribly valuable. And this slide is about the second half. Once you have the numbers, what do you do? So, walk through these 4 scenarios. High reach, low clicks. The content is getting seen, but it isn't moving people. This usually means 1 or 2 things. The call to the action is weak or unclear, or the content and the ask are misaligned. You told a beautiful story and then asked people to do something that didn't follow from it. The fix is to tighten the connection between what you've asked emotionally and what you're asking for. High email open rate, low conversion. People are opening and reading, but not clicking through to donate or buy tickets. The relationship is working, but the ask isn't landing. And that usually remembers that the build phase, think back to Module 8 about the build phase, didn't fully earn the conversion moment. You may have gotten to the ask too quickly. People aren't ready to give just yet. Strong early engagement that fades. This is the mid-campaign sag. The opening content worked, you got attention. But by week 2 or 3, engagement dropped. Content got repetitive. The solution is often a new voice or a new angle, not more in the same. Strong content, weak tier 1 outcomes. The content looks great in the dashboard, but the donations didn't move. This is often a targeting platform. Your hub platform may be reaching the right content, but not the right people. You need to go back to your email list and check whether it includes the people who can actually take the action you need. If you're asking for donations, you need to make sure that your target audience for your hub platform are people who have enough money to give, are people who have the capacity to donate. So the goal of this module is not to turn you into data analysts, although, it's a great part-time activity. It was to give you enough of a framework that you never walk into a meeting without knowing what your numbers mean and what you would do about them. The mission is the reason, the metrics are the proof. You're not betraying your mission by measuring it, you are protecting it. Takeaway 2, Discipline selectivity is a skill. 3 to 5 metrics connected to real objectives, tracked consistently, interpreted honestly, and that's all you need. Takeaway 3, this is a competitive advantage. Many communications people either resist metrics or drown in them. The person who can look at a dashboard and say, here's what this means, and here's what I think we should do differently, is the person who gets promoted, is the person who gets to stay in the room when the hard conversations happen. You are learning to be that person. That's who I want you to be, and that's the point of this module. Again, I teach a whole class on social media measurement. So I can't stick a whole class. I mean, gosh, this PowerPoint's already 30 minutes. I'm surprised you haven't fallen off asleep. So I can't do a whole class in 1 week, but I do want to stress that measuring is important. Measuring is what gives your communication strategies their legitimacy.